Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a cast over. We've got the same players as the last set. It's Mystery Meat against Neblime. Hope you enjoyed the FFA cast that Mess did the other day. Now, let's get into a Terran versus Terran match on Nightfall. I was told that this is the best match Neblime has ever played. Not maybe in terms of skill, I don't know yet, but in terms of, allowing there to be some high-quality content. And this match actually does have some spectators. We have Dead Infested and Green Eggs and Spam watching. And I think it was, this match was played while I was at work yesterday. It is the 18th yes, indeed, the 18th of October. Happy birthday to the Shambler, by the way, in case you somehow missed that. But today we have some Terran versus Terran. Maybe they will build diadems or something, and that will allow Shambler to remember back in the old days when diadems could attack air units. It was brilliant. Anyway, this is Cosmonic Brood War. It's a great project for Starcraft 1. No bias at all, of course, having literally made the project myself. And we have Neblime, the Royal Blue Terran, in the bottom right, against the Lemon Terran of Nerf Toss, aka Mystery Meat. Now, Mystery Meat has been playing random, and he does like to tell his opponent his race, which to me gives up the main advantage of playing random. But whatever, we'll see what happens. This map is Nightfall by Veek. There's been some changes to this map, or some proposed changes anyway, where the layout was trying to be adjusted or rectified or changed or whatever. We do see that we can track our players' camera positions even in replays. So we just saw them both take a look at the situation there and say that, oh, yeah, there's my opponent's Mason. And indeed, this is a TVT match. So TVT looks very different than in StarCraft 1, because in Cosmonic Brood War, you have access to so many different options. Now, both of our players have gone Stockade first, starting for the barracks, but of course you'll end up seeing some interesting things here. Now, this Mason did not attack the Maverick. It's unlikely to be able to get away because the Maverick was able to stim, so indeed it will die. Generally, it's a very minor detail, but you might be able to do some damage, in fact, like Mystery Meat did to this Maverick, and then force the Mason to come off and repair it in case there's going to be some sort of run across the map. It doesn't look like Mystery Meat cares as much because Stimpak in this game only gives you 5 HP loss, and you might have noticed you get it from the start of the game because there's no upgrades or researches. So as a result, it ends up being a pretty safe opener. You kill your opponent's scout pretty fast. Now, there is going to be a Ministry made on site. This is an interesting and bold play, but when you're against another Terran, maybe you don't expect them to do too much. Mystery Meat, on the other hand, is casually going to go ahead and lay down his own. He's not going to be building it on site, so there will be a liftoff, and it's a little bit late. But he wanted to add some more Mavericks. And what we've seen, actually, we've seen Neblime do this even against Mystery Meat when Mystery Meat was playing as Zerg, where Neblime would go the Stockade, 1 Maverick, expand route. And it's very, I would say it's pretty risky, right? But he's even going to move across the map as well, which, it's not really the end of the world. Like if, say, some Mavericks came up from the side, like they went a very long path, just 1 Maverick could come in here, stim, and kill that Mason. Although, there would be some reinforcements. So, it's interesting. It's interesting to see that. So both of our players going for a Starpad follow-up. Neither of them interested in getting mech added to the fray just yet. And there actually is going to be a Maverick set across the map to cover the bottom left area of the map, just to see what's going on there. This Ministry is just about to finish. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing some drop play, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing some pretty solid long games. I assume that's why everybody was raving about this game, because it was super epic. And usually the most epic games are the long ones. Now that anchor is instantaneously going to be canceled, and the Mason should be picked off. Indeed it is. So far able to fall back away from the Cyprians. And Cyprians, they do fire that line trace damage, where if they penetrate their target, then subsequent targets will be taking 50% damage. And that has generally evened out a lot of the balancing implications, where previously they would just erase a bunch of stuff because they did full damage. It's really funny. We actually went back and looked after work yesterday. I came home. I was doing my phone posting, which I normally do. If you join our Discord server, you might be able to catch me in the wee hours of the waning Eastern time night. And basically, as this, there's going to be some tickling happening over here. The Mavericks are coming back, so this isn't really too consequential. It's pulling some mining time, but Neblime's ahead in workers right now, so not really the end of the world. I do like how hard the Maverick has to do to fight off against that. So there you go, ends up getting executed. But like I said, we were looking back at old maps actually, not old states of the game, but old maps like Sun Starved or Crossguard or Brimstone Disco. Like, I'm just throwing some names out there that old heads will remember. And these maps were so fucked up in terms of like what we didn't know, basically. One of the things that we've realized is like even Nightfall, right, has fairly wide distances between your main and your natural. And Mystery Meat's Wraith is about to arrive and do some heckling. It'll just be attacked by the Maverick. It'll have to be responded to. And in fact, Neblime's reaction time's a little bit slow there. I think he had his own Wraith scouting out. So that'll be kind of interesting. That's going to force out a Watchdog. He already had one in his main. And there is indeed a Fulcrum being constructed here. There's a Cyprian right over here that should respond to this a lot faster, but it's a little bit slow. So he's going to go ahead and seed that particular Mason. The Fulcrum will then finish, thanks to some idle workers that were right there. Yeah, I don't know. Both of our players being a little bit sloppy with their economy and their general unit placement. But it's going to be a mass stockade follow-up here. I bet you guys, if you guys are coming from Starcraft 1, you guys have never seen TVT have lots of barracks. But that's going to happen. And meanwhile, Goliaths are coming out here from the Fulcrum. Some Cyprians as well as Watchdogs sort of stationed around here. If there's a critical mass of Wraiths, obviously the Cyprians would be kind of sitting ducks, but you could add a lodestone and defend them and also detect the Wraiths. We'll see if that ends up happening. Goliath is out. A very, very powerful tier 1 unit, kind of a stopgap for, like, if you want to consolidate your power in the early stages of the game, you can do that by building lots of Goliaths, but it does delay your tech. Now, we have the famous Ahmed drop. Harakans are named for the Firebat, also known as Ahmed around here. It will be scouted out here by this Wraith, and surely he'll have taken note of the now 6 Harakans and the Trojan, which fits 8 of them. Coupling that with an Ant Seal, that's pretty good, right? Mobile detection, but most importantly, that little bubble that you see around it, any attacks, any straightforward damage attacks coming into that bubble will be intercepted. So if you attack it with a Maverick or some other unit, it'll be intercepted and absorbed by the Ant Seal's energy. So you can imagine how powerful that ends up being. Now, there's going to be a Cyprian and a Goliath in this anchor, I think. Very, very defensive play coming out of Neblime. He's going for a 2-base tech route. And we have a Vestry follow-up, 4 Stockades now, 4 Mystery Bee, adding another drop. I really wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being something that, yeah, honestly, like Mystery Bee might just really commit heavily into drops. But he sees the Atlas, halfway done at this point. A little bit of a sloppy play. I like the Goliath finishing just in time to pop one of the Wraiths. I wouldn't... I'm a little surprised that Neblime built his Atlas far away from Wraiths after... far away from his Watchdogs, rather, after being attacked when constructing the Fulcrum. Meanwhile, the Lodestone is in for static detection, and we are actually going to see some Cyprians added into this. So Cyprians actually take up 2 transport space, and yeah, why not just, you might even unload another, no, he's got another Maverick sort of laying around there. So there's going to be a 6 Huracan drop. We already sort of earmarked that earlier. And if they can get on top of this anchor, it can blow it up and isolate the Goliath pretty easily. This Wraith in the bottom right is just going to be scouting around. And since the Atlas is complete, we have 2 starports and a mantle coming up here. So tier 2 tech is already being deployed for Neblime. And the mantle was recently changed so that it didn't require the add-ons for the tech. I liked tech add-ons conceptually for a couple of reasons, but ultimately it didn't end up, in my opinion, it didn't end up looking too good. So one of the things that you want to point out here is that Mystery Meat's now starting to bank his resources. He's going to be going for tier 2 off the back of this, and he's going to hope to do some economic damage to slow his opponent down. Because otherwise, you're going to be seeing a lot of, general power. And unfortunately, it doesn't really look like that drop worked out for him. But did it cause enough of, chaos in order to do something else? No, I think these drops were entirely inconsequential. Mystery Meat maintains a worker deficit compared to Neblime. And I think a lot of it was that he lost the Harakans over here. He looks like he re-attempted it or maybe just ran some in. That was not super great, right? That was not super great. So in CMBW, when you see a transport rubble like over here, which is sort of occluded by the Masons mining, the transports, when they blow up, show the corpses of whatever was in there. And so when you see like a neatly arranged set of corpses decaying at roughly the same rate, it means that they didn't even get a chance to unload. So it doesn't look like too many of them were unloaded. But at the same time, maybe that pressure is going to stop Neblime. We see that it's not, but that might have been the idea for Mystery Meat as he sets up his 3rd base. Now, one of the things that we do see in the meantime is he's erected an Atlas, and he's going for quad starport. So I'm guessing we're going to see some Wyverns to control the ground, and maybe some Valkyrie fights to control the air. Now, unfortunately, these Mavericks just run head first into Ahmed. who wastes no time in roasting them. Now, Cyprians are going to be pretty good at maintaining dominance over here for the crowd control, and it's going to be a little bit before we actually see these units finish up. They're actually going for Valkyries first because he clocked the presence of the starports. These starports are going for not Wyverns, not Gorgons for anti-ground. No, they're also going for Valkyries first. So the Valkyries are, oh man, the kinetic penetration is absolutely shredding these Mavericks in the meantime. Doing wisely to focus down most of the Cyprian army, so it's a little bit of a trade. But at this point, the Valkyries exist to fight other Valkyries and for no other reason. There's nothing else that's going to come from the air side. So it looks like the Masons are being attempted to pull. Obviously, they're getting sidetracked by the Watchdog. And the Ramses is here to do some more crowd control. It's essentially like a souped-up Cyprian walker, you could think of it as. The Valkyries are posturing, but why would you fight other Valkyries with your Valkyries? It doesn't even make any sense. And we even have a Phalanx out here, but, you know, unfortunately for our Neblime friend, I don't think that he's going to be able to maintain this push. He has no more units coming. He did at least shut down mining or interrupt mining for a while. Unfortunately, his Phalanx is really not taking much damage from the Mavericks, but at the same time, it's not able to kill them through the Clerics, so that's a little funny. He does have more Valkyries on the way because you really need that air superiority versus your opponent, who is not building any anti-ground air units. Now we have the Wyverns coming out. We also have some Wraiths, but... Okay, the 3 Wyverns are out. What are they going to end up doing? They're going to come to the front lines. And then, I mean, he's got the 3 Valks, but I feel like, I mean, there's double that count over here. Obviously, Splash is a big deal, so I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up going awry for Neblime if he's not a little bit careful. He's now using the Valkyries to spot for that Phalanx that was able to deploy. You can see it doesn't take too long to start executing Clerics. And there's more Ramses on the way. Have we added any additional mantles? Just 2 mantles. He's getting a 4th starport. Now we're starting to see Wyverns from both players, and the Phalanx is being rallied across the map as well. The Phalanxes allow you to siege the position from afar, and then you kind of just want to jockey the, you know, in different areas to try to fight things like the Valkyries or the Wyverns or whatever. Try to force the committal. There's even some Sentinels being put down for anti-ground. I don't think that's the scariest thing, but Neblime only recently saw, I think, the presence of Wyverns. Although when you see Valks, you have to assume, okay, Wyverns are a possibility. Perhaps an inevitability. I'm not trying to keep track of resources here as our players are having their mains slowly deplete. Not yet depleted, but pretty soon some of these minerals are going to start providing less resources. And we have a big engagement with some of the Valkyries for Neblime not in a good position to respond. However, the Ramses were doing pretty consistent damage, and that is going to force the Valkyries back. Now, there are some Shamans here to repair. We're going to see if that ends up making a significant impact. I think the longer this skirmish goes on, and of course it's favored to go on for a while, thanks to Mystery Meat's position, you should absolutely expect that. Now, not quite able to burn down the Sentinel, so it's going to get a few shots off onto the Phalanx, and then it'll burn down eventually. Now, here comes the Wyverns and Valkyries from Neblime's side. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the Wyverns getting damaged here pretty heavily by the Valks. Needs more Ramses, I think, on the ground if his own Valks are not going to be enough to focus this down. But then if Mystery Meat's Wyverns kick into gear, for those who don't know, Wyverns can only attack ground units. Valkyries can only attack air units. And Ramses will eventually fall, maybe not eventually, maybe swiftly fall to the Wyverns, right? There's only 7 of them, but that's still going to be a pretty good number. And there's not really a great set of anti-air, right? Valkyries are going to try to engage on here. Obviously, the Wyvern's not providing too much damage at this point. More Ramses trickling in. So that was a pretty good spread, I think, from Mystery Meat, and I think he's pretty much isolated all of the Valkyries that are present. He could be engaging onto this Wyvern force to stop and to keep his ministry alive, but I can't quite tell. I think it will end up falling. Yeah, indeed. There's a Phalanx out, but it's being repaired. I think it's going to be just fine. And so the push is actually broken. There's an overabundance of Sentinels when he had Ramses and Wyverns to deal with that. I think more Watchdogs could have helped. You can see how they're doing pretty efficiently over this count of Wyverns, right? It's not a critical mass. But his own Wyverns ended up falling to the mass Valk, and he doesn't really have a great response to that, right? He didn't have a critical mass of Ramses. He's only producing off of 2 mantles, and he's getting more Valkyries now. But, you know, that's the other thing I'm trying to pay attention to here is the 4th was set up in the meantime. Now, Neblime did take an economic advantage from that. It's just a question of, you know, how powerful is the response going to be for Mystery Meat. Now, there's stuff to defend from the Wraith over here. He kind of lazily wasted that Wraith moving over there. I think he might have been occupied by something else or just wanted to quickly move some units around. I'm seeing that there's a Mason over here that could maybe construct, some sort of static defense in the meanwhile. In fact, I mean, it sounds silly, but if this game goes long, this Mason could absolutely construct like a diadem somewhere, which is a tier 3 artillery. It's essentially the ion cannon, just with a fancy name. We start to see some shamans up. This wyvern was sent off into the distance and gets attacked by the Mavericks, so that's going to clock that position. I don't know. Oh, it looks like, yes, the Sentinel is going to be constructed just out of range of the sight range of the Ministry as it's being built over there. So that will actually help to shut that down. Meanwhile, Hurricanes are being accosted by this wyvern. It's got 3 kills, which is a pretty good number. I mean, I usually try to do either less or more than 3 because it's such a rote number that you hear all the time. And we actually have anvils being constructed. Okay, so we might end up seeing some nuclear strikes happen as the game goes on. Morning Stars, the name of the nuclear missile now. Obviously a pretty based name. Now, we did see some Valkyries flying around, but I think they've recentered. And yeah, the Sentinel, it did its job, right? It even lifts off because the Wyverns can't attack air units. That's pretty goofy. It could, position itself a little bit further away, but the Valkyries are here to hunt it down. Now, honestly, that is a pretty good move from Neblime. It slows down the force there, but it also shows Neblime where the air units actually are. So now he's going to be able to go up to 5 bases. I don't think these Hurricanes are going to be enough to dissuade that. There's a Madrigal coming down. It actually should probably be microed backwards here, but it's okay. It takes a little bit of damage. Now, the Mason critically stays alive. I think the Hurricanes could have potentially struck that. And some Cataphracts are out, but they don't do too well against Wyverns, at least not without a more critical mass. I like the Wyverns chasing other Wyverns, or at least the single Wyvern here. And it's just going to be Valk stacks for a little bit. We've got 15 Valkyries for Mystery Meat. Heavy investment. I'm checking around to see if we have any other cases where there's going to be, a diadem, or rather a Daedala for tier 3. I don't see it for either players. We finally have the commandment coming. Now, here's a Seraph. The Seraph has changed from the Science Vessel. Irradiate is its only ability. Well, its only spell, but it can also paint nuclear strikes. So missile launches will start happening. There is a cheeky Crouching Tiger hidden Ahmed in the bottom there. We've got some very well-placed watchdogs to cover any sort of assortment, or at least alert him if like a stack of Wyverns ends up flying over there. We have a cheeky Sentinel over here to secure what may be the 6th space for Neblime. And yeah, what's Ahmed going to do? Well, it looks like he was spotted, so there is going to be a response. Now, the Seraph should have been clocked by the Huracan Scout, and the air move out is very deadly, potentially. There's another Seraph over here. It can be focused down by the Valkyries. He's got a Mason moving around. I don't know if he maybe observed this position. There's some watchdogs here to delay this. What's the response going to be? It looks like instantaneously he's going to pull his army. I think it was on a control group, though, because that extra Seraph, which would be really, really effective in this case, it wasn't actually there. Where's the Irradiate? We need the Irradiate. The Armor Rend is big. There's a huge stack of damage. Irradiate only deals 50 damage, but obviously it's still splash, so there's no split there. That actually ends up stacking up and dealing a lot more. And now the Wyverns are not really in a good position to respond to this, right? And if you couldn't tell, Irradiate also deals damage to all targets instead of just Bio, so it's a very big deal. Now, meanwhile, there was a Bio Force that charged over here, and the Worker Pull from the top right base goes to the bottom left base just to get Ahmeded, so that's a pretty big deal. We do have Ramses here to try to answer it, as well as a single Phalanx. The stack of air units rejoins the 5 Shamans to try to respond to that force very well. So this is very good back and forth here. I think at this point, even though Neblime maintains the worker advantage, he doesn't have the base advantage anymore, right? He has to reset his worker count over here. He's got to obviously resecure his bottom left base as well. And meanwhile, I think the same set of bases has been taken for Mystery Meat, right? This Sentinel is going to get bopped. The Ministry should lift off here because it will take less damage from the Valkyries. It has a chance to escape. There's other Valkyries over here as well. There's a Seraph targeting down the Valkyries, and that's definitely going to help. Unfortunately for that Mason, he's almost certainly dead. See ya, nerd. And there's another Irradiate cast. I think it missed most of its targets. But it even walks through the field, or flies through the field, I should say. With the Wyverns ended up getting felled, that is going to probably delay. He should just turn around and fight this. He doesn't remember how low they are, I think. I'm looking around to see, again, do we have any other tech? One of the Valkyries does indeed go down before it can return to the front there. Yeah, this Air Force obviously does have some responses, right? And one of them is definitely the Seraph. The passive Armor Rend aura that it has is a pretty big deal. And then on top of it, it can irradiate for clumps of damage. So Seraph Valkyrie funnily enough, is a pretty good counter to Valkyrie Wyvern. We have Seraphs for Mystery Meat. We still have not seen any nukes. I'm looking around to see if we've seen any anvils added from Mystery Meat, and it does not look like that's the case. Whereas, obviously, we did see the anvil added over here, an anvil added over here. Neither of them have any sort of any nukes or anything like that. So they have not been loaded. And this base was allowed to preserve. So, actually, you know, I was saying earlier, Mystery Meat has the economic advantage. I think that's pretty fleeting. That being said, Mystery Meat does have a lot of resources banked up, and I'm pretty sure he's gunning for that tier 3 at a faster timing. Or it would be if it weren't for the Daedala being constructed right here. Right now, Neblime has not only the base advantage once again, somehow, but he also is able to stabilize and get up to tier 3 faster than his opponent. It's been an ongoing conversation that it feels like maybe for some people they feel like it's not worth it to cap geysers. I think it's definitely worth it to cap at least a few. However, oh, big irradiates there. Oh, wow. That's going to be a lot of damage added up over time. Some more of them are exchanged. There's not really a response here, but at least, the response is going to be to snipe them all out with Valkyries. I'm waiting for the counter irradiate. Instead, he's just on a bit of a follow command. There you go. Now he's going to try for it. Chase him down, see what he can do. But this base is in jeopardy. There's only the single watchdog. That's obviously not going to do too much. And a huge irradiate there coming out from the Seraph. But the Madrigals are deployed. They're going to mop up the Masons. The big response is in. Obviously, the Valkyries have been pretty heavily damaged thanks to the irradiate. Now the Seraph rending their armor is also a pretty big deal. So the ground army does get wiped by the Wyverns, but look at this. I mean, all the Wyverns are basically dead. Honestly, I mean, maybe it wasn't enough. I don't know what happened there. I think maybe he never, Mystery Meat never wound up retaliating and then going back and healing. So he ends up losing pretty much his entire Air Force for that. He's got 2 Wyverns that can go home and lick their wounds, but the Shamans were not able to do too much there. Now, Mystery Meat is going to respond by trying to take the base in the middle, one of the bases in the middle. I'm not sure that that's going to be significant enough, and I'm still waiting to see what the tier 3 is going to look like. Obviously, it's not done yet. We did just see the anvil flash, so we know that there are nuclear strikes available for Neblime. I want to see if he can make them worthwhile. People don't know about nukes in CMBW, but when they figure it out, they start to get hooked. They start thinking, oh my god, I fucking love this. Huge stack of idle workers in the top middle there. 12 o'clock is, it's got a lot of engineers on standby that could definitely be transferred over to the 9 o'clock position. Center base on the left-hand side, now erected. Needs to see some... Yeah, there we go. Okay, we've got some diadems on the way, boys. And not only do we have some diadems, I'm sure there's going to be some tier 3 tech backing that up. Now, in the meantime, I didn't track whether or not there was actually a tier 3 constructed for Mystery Meat. I assumed he was banking up enough gas for it, but as we can see here, he still is a little bit south of that goal. So he's going to try to set up a base in the middle, but honestly, I think this diadem is going to be more than enough to grab mid control very, very firmly for Neblime, and I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if that ends up coming true. Now, the reservoir is starting to come out. We are seeing some gas caps, even a well bore coming in, and some nanite assemblies on the back line. Now, the nuke is sort of randomly cast over here. It looks like he's even going to cancel it afterwards, thinking maybe there was a base over there. And I'm not sure, like, Mystery Meat is, like, darting all around. Where is it? And then he finds it. Okay, so this, I mean, you can use the nukes. They're not as expensive as stock StarCraft. The missiles themselves are less significant than they were in previous cases, right? But there's the diadem shot. Off it goes. And, yeah, our bad boy is done. There's a second one on the way. And at this point, yeah, I mean, you're seeing the leveling of this forward positioning. And that area of effect field on the ground is going to be pretty potent as well. If any of the diadem shots happen to hit where air units are coming, like at this point, it should be very obvious that we are looking at a dangerous position. Ahmed is trying to come down here on the way. The gas base was lifted off that Neblime was trying to take. Ramses have cycled down. That could open an area of attack. And there's a counter diadem. So there was a tier 3 constructed at some point. I must have missed it. I'm scouring the base. I was in the top middle. I just narrowly missed it. Valk fights are happening. We've got the Ramses on the ground. I think most of them are still alive. They've been transferred over here to try to respond to the threats. Another thing that's important about this is that it's reducing the uptime of some of the diadems, right? Because now they have to respond to threats from the left-hand side, instead of continuing to siege this middle position. So I do think that I'm surprised, actually, Mystery Meat was able to stabilize here. His diadems will have slightly more range than Neblime's because they will have cliff advantage. But here we go. The exchanges are out. And we're starting to see the wars happen, so that the Ion Wars are in full effect. You know, you could quote the prequels if you like, I guess. Begun the Ion Wars have. Oh boy, this is a big stack if it's not pulled back. Oof! Lots of Ramses just ended up getting bopped. And the Cataphracts can sustain that, but only so far, right? Meanwhile, the air control is a little bit sloppy here for Mystery Meat. Neblime is not really in danger of dealing with that just yet, but a good irradiate as well onto those Valks. I think Neblime will walk away with the air battle for sure. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, diadems cannot attack air units, so that's a pretty big deal. But there's nothing to respond to the Valks, and now this is a point where if Neblime goes for any Wyverns or any sort of anti-ground ship, he can just walk all over this, right? There's more Valkyries coming, but absolutely, if you pick off the Seraphs, if you pick off the Wyverns themselves, you can do some pretty good damage over here. There's still some 6-odd Valkyries being produced. I thought maybe he was on an attack move onto his own target, but not quite. I thought he was about to start killing that stuff. But hey, we have all these diadems, but we don't really have anything else. And now the ion fields are going to start ripping shit over in Mystery Meat's worker line, right? Cataphracts are over here as well. Armor is being rended. We've got a nuclear strike coming. Oof, that Seraph is pretty low. And here come the Valkyries to try to focus it down. If that diadem shot hadn't hit, I think maybe the Seraph is able to get the nuclear strike off to start dealing with some of these. And again, the Ion Wars are happening, right? One of the diadems was just bopped in the meanwhile. We've got Minotaurs onto the front lines. That is going to put this attack to bed. Valkyries do almost negligible damage to Minotaurs, and they've got pretty solid stats, right? 500 health, the 4 armor, but plus you get increased armor in general. Well, they do need to move away from the diadem shots, obviously. But yeah, here what we're seeing now, this is essentially the endgame Terran army. Not quite. I mean, there's more things you can do, right? But you can see here, the Valkyries are trying their hardest, but all those shielding little overlays there, that's going to be the shot. Oh, well, okay, I'll update my thoughts on this one in a second here, as the Minotaurs are going down, but those shield overlay hits were an added 2 armor being put onto the Valkyries. The Valkyries were actually dealing 1 damage per rocket. They do fire 6 rockets, so it's 6 damage per volley, and there were a lot of them, right? There were 16. The reason that went away from the Minotaurs is the Shamans were out healing the DPS of the Minotaur. So that was actually a fairly expensive loss. Losing 4 Minotaurs there, not going to be too much. Unfortunately, he's got a random Minotaur coming over here. I don't know if that's to provide vision for his own diadems, but he's lost 2 out of the 3 that he had on the front lines. He's not really building any additional ones. He does have apothecaries coming up, so that's going to be some tier 3 infantry, but I want to see some additional units come out of these. He's adding Magnetars, which do have Yamato, as opposed to the Minotaur. So that could be pretty significant to try to deal with these stacks of air units and really start leveraging his tech advantage. But look behind the scenes. We've got 4 nanite assemblies being constructed for Mystery Meat. So, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And honestly, with the Seraphs here to try to reduce the Minotaur sort of armor, although that wasn't even necessary in that case because there's just so many. There's 20 Valkyries at this point. That's a pretty big deal as well. Now, the Magnetars are done. They're on their way out. There's more of them coming. Equal nanite assemblies, but not the same amount of uptime, I think. And oh no, the Magnetars just finished, and one of them gets absolutely shot out of the sky. Oof, absolutely locked. Lots of diadems are shooting these Ramses over here, which could try to charge onto the Ramses to provide more shots there. Oh, this is a pretty big hit. Oh no. Yeah, honestly, I think the Shamans are just... Well, okay, only a few of them ended up dying. They're going to heal themselves back up as a response, but it's just utter chaos in the middle of the map now. And that's sort of like the handshake that these Terran players have decided, particularly Mystery Meat. He built so many diadems, and now he's starting to realize, okay, if I just add a couple of Sentinels here, I'll be fine. Because the Sentinels will deal with the chaff that comes in that the diadems don't have like the attack rate for. And then I'll stop shooting myself, basically. This is definitely a game of stop hitting yourself. And we do have another mantle over here. The apothecaries are out. We're seeing some 7 steps. We have a diadem coming. I'm not 100% sure that 7 steps are a good choice over here. You'd mostly do that. I guess the one thing about 7 steps is you can probably deal pretty good damage to the air stack if you hit them. And it's mostly Valkyries at this point, right? Oh my goodness. The sheer number of diadem shots is very scary. Now, Magnetars are taking negligible damage. Now, there are some Centaurs out here that deal pretty good splash on their hit scan. And they also, just narrowly, cannot outrange the Watchdogs themselves. But they'll do okay. They'll do all right. That attack force is indeed incoming. We have the Seraph being pulled back in by the Magnetar shots. Unfortunately, all of his Valkyries, Neblime just walked right into a radiation field. The Centaurs are wounded a little bit, and they are on their way. Yamato shot, I think, killed his own Valkyries, question mark? I'm not really sure what was up with that. And there are some Azazels out here as well to try to keep these Magnetars alive. But the Centaurs are going to come in here to try to finish the job. We've got Ramses, we've got Cataphracts, we've got Diadems. And the Centaurs, yeah, they were already walking wounded a little bit there. And the Azazels, crucially, kept a lot of these Magnetars healthy when otherwise they wouldn't have. Azazel is where you find defensive matrix now. So that's, where is it? Yeah, that's Azazel MVP right there. We only have kills display, but we should have, like, HP healed on that kind of unit or damage protected against and stuff like that. Centaurs are being yanked left, right, and center. Some of the Magnetars are falling, and look at this. 7 steps just occupied. Yeah, they just got some of the... they absolutely just backfired there because the Diadems shot the ground units, and it does deal air splash. We had some... Silver Tongues out as well. They do need to be microed versus these Diadems, but they do pretty good damage. Unfortunately, Neblime is losing one of his Magnetars here. Not for very much gain either. The Yamato does come out and deal some pretty good damage. There's a Valkyrie hiding inside the Magnetar. It is actually doing damage, even though there's a visual bug with it, but that's a bit funny. Oh my god, did it stay alive? No, just narrowly did not stay alive. The Azazel could have healed it. Maybe it was a misclick, not sure. But the Diadems are starting to be broken now, right? There's the Ramses out, which are, again, probably more hazardous to the air units than anything. Yeah, we're going to see another Magnetar fall, I think. Oh, just some Valkyries. It kept moving. Magnetar fight! Magnetar v Magnetar, they're going to just pull each other around thanks to their passive. Anything that the Magnetar hits is... is yoinked towards the Magnetar, right? Pulled towards it. Very, very good, but, you know, measured. And there you go, Yamato to wipe out one of the last Diadems on the high ground. Only one remains. This position no longer being harvested, and some Watchdogs being put up here as well. So, okay, the question is, what is the transition from this point onward? We have got more Watchdogs. A Diadem has lifted off and is on its way to the front lines. Silver Tongues have been built by Mystery Meat, so he's also trying to use the high-tier stuff, but Magnetars do pretty well versus them, right? They're very, you know, for tier 3, right? They're fairly squishy. Some Yamatos are being leveraged to try to deal with these Diadems. And, yeah, I mean, obviously the Magnetar not the tankiest capital ship, so it will end up falling to that Watchdog. But the Diadem for Neblime has taken some aggressive posturing. Now, meanwhile, this Diadem went totally unnoticed. We do have some more units ended up falling there. Looks like mostly Silver Tongues. I'm wondering what Mystery Meat's feel. He's got a lot of minerals, but no gas at this point, right? Well, I say no gas. He's got 1,000 gas. He does have this base set up. So that's a pretty big deal for him. Meanwhile, Neblime keeping his money much lower and having 300 workers. Keen was telling me after one of the Ascension games that Neblime is known for building like 100 workers even in Brood War, which is obviously not great. Or maybe not 100. That might be an exaggeration. I don't know. I think that's what he said. He's like, yeah, okay, Neblime's got 100 workers. What a surprise. Well, how about 300 workers? I think at some point they stop being that useful, buddy. You can only get so efficient on your workers. Now, unfortunately for Neblime, I think his Diadem that is currently being constructed is not long for this world, right? We do have a couple of Magnetars out that I think if the Ramses were focused on, at least one of them could have been bopped. And look at that, double... You can pull him towards you if you want to, but the double thing hit pretty hard there. That Magnetar was almost going to stay alive, but there's 4 Silver Tongues to try to snipe it down. Silver Tongues are very, very long-range infantry. Quite potent. Meanwhile, speaking of, they've actually wiped the top part of the map, and that's a very crucial amount of gas income for Mystery Meat, right? Remember that he's trying to produce off of the 4 nanite assemblies. He's got 3 apothecaries queued up with a bunch of stuff. He's got his starports idle. I feel like those could also be contributing, particularly Seraphs or Azazels or something like that. The Masons have been pulled to try to interrupt the Silver Tongues, but obviously they don't outrange each other, although one of them has been bopped. No, wait! Oh, it was like 2 attacks. No, 1 attack away from being killed by a Mason, because Masons have 1 armor pin. Don't forget that. But GG is called, and boys, we just had it. The most ridiculous, perhaps, most epic, perhaps, TVT matchup that we've ever darn seen. Shout out to Mystery Meat and Neblime for playing this one. Lots of interesting exploration, right? Cosmonic Brood War has so many units, has the 3 distinct tiers of tech that you have to kind of get to at a very deliberate level, that, to me, we haven't really gotten to the end game that often. Like, we didn't see Reclamation from the Captaincy or the Iron Foundry. We didn't see, like, yeah, there was, like, at least those 2 structures that were not built by either side. And even within the Apothecary, we mostly saw a little bit of 7-step, but some Silver Tongues. And 7-steps actually surprised me with how much damage they were doing to things like diadems. I think if you micro them, they can be pretty powerful. But, you know, we're going to have to wait and see on that one. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of things we're still figuring out, a lot of things that might be busted or might be underwhelming for the cost or anything like that. We will continue to iterate and refine, but this was an exciting match. I'm glad I was able to cast it. I'm glad you were able to catch the action as well. So stay tuned for more Cosmonic Brood War castovers. We do have more tournament matches coming up, and maybe we'll see you sign up for the next one. It's going to be big. See you there.